Good morning. Hi, thank you. Richard Hughes, GP, full-time GP in Glastonbury. I've heard these words an awful lot, and I need to be reassured that I'm just not going to hear them again. It's all going to disappear once again. We talk about teams, and over the last 20 years of practice, all I've seen is our teams being dismantled. We've had multidisciplinary teams in our practice. We used to have a CPN, physio, podiatrist, district nurse, health visitor, and a midwife, all in our building. They've all gone. And when I talked to at previous meetings about this, and I said, look, wouldn't it be nice to get our teams back? Someone from Somerset Partnership said, well, if you think you're getting your physio back, you can think again. We've all got to change if we're going to go down this route. We've also got, we used to have federations as well. So we in a locality, we would meet up as a federation. And that was a funded organisation where it was recognised that we needed time to get together to talk. And that funding was pulled, and we no longer have federation meetings. In our area, we've decided that we want to keep talking to each other, so we do it for free. In fact, we pay to go to meetings where we talk to each other that we used to get funded for. So everything's gone in the opposite direction to what you're suggesting. Do you really think you can turn this boat around and head back where we need to go?
Thank you, and I recognise everything you said. You could have been speaking in Wallasey, you could have been speaking in Newcastle, where I was the week before. There's a consistency. I wouldn't be here, and I would not be standing in front of colleagues if I didn't think we could make a difference, and the system is getting aligned. Yes, there's still some voices that are out there saying it's not going to happen. That's why we've started with this 216 sites, and the next stage of going where the energy is. I've stood on stages in the past, and I've learned from that, where I've said, I remember with practice-based commissioning is here to stay. And I didn't think I was lying, but obviously it wasn't. I genuinely think this is our last attempt to rejuvenate an NHS. And I think what's at stake for those people you're interacting and say, it's not going to happen, is that what's at stake is a service that's still free at the point of need and not based on anybody's ability to pay. I think that's what's at stake. And if people are saying it's not going to happen, we're going to just try harder at what's failed, then yes, that's what frightens me and why I'm still enthused. I wouldn't be as well if I was just trying to sell a new concept, as opposed to saying we've got a community of practice, a learning network, an experience where some are talking about organisational form, are talking about some of the details of the technical aspects now of the maturing programme. We've got a Secretary of State, as long as he's here. If you have a look on our website, we've actually got his words at the conference, where a question was asked, and his exact words were, yes, 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 I love the primary care home. They were the words, weren't they, Andy? Exactly. So we have got momentum behind it, in as much the service is delivering it. We've got political backing, and this was directly commissioned by Simon Stevens. So those who are saying this is not going to happen, they are pushing against what NHS England are calling Primary Care Network Programme, which is predicated on the success of the primary care home to date. But that's why I was trying to give the evidence about cultural change, but we're not going to get everybody accepting it. And I'm not sure if there's... One of my concerns is when I travel the country, I get some colleagues saying, well, we're doing something different and it's working. And my answer to that is, for God's sake, don't change, because you've said the magic word, it's working. And if what you mean is working, you've got collaborative efforts and you've got evidence that is improving outcomes for the community, then why would you want to change? But we're saying we have got something here that if things aren't working, the evidence base and the community of practice and the learning to date is something we can help to transfer into areas where they're saying this is, okay, we'll have a go at it.
Thanks, Jay.
So there's a sense that it has to happen, Richard, and there's a sense that the models that can be looked for. Anything to add, Michael?
Only to say that all of the chief executives of the Foundation Trust, the chief officer of the CCG, and the regulators who kind of direct the work of the healthcare system in Somerset are signed up to this as the right way to go. And I share your sorrows, Richard, having lived through many of those changes myself. What I'd say is, I think there is a genuine level of commitment. If you can keep an open mind for 6 to 9 months, I hope you'll see some practical changes.
Thanks.
Can I just add, Martin, you know me, I've heard it all before too. And that's exactly what I said when we saw a presentation that Michael and Nancy came to the Somerset GP board. And I said, yeah, what's different? And what I heard was different was genuinely, as opposed to lip service, this way of doing things actually very much reflects and supports what you actually want to do. Not what they want to do, but what you want to do. And there is funding for it, which, yeah, more about the details of that this afternoon. But I said it's another opportunity. It is another opportunity. And unless we commit to going with it, and we do see a genuine change, then we've lost the opportunity. And let's give it one more go, eh? This time it might work.
Another question?
We've got time for 2 more.
Thank you.
Just a quick question. It's about, it's good to hear you saying that we should have that talk first and don't worry about the contracts, but I think that's probably been one of the things that stopped people trying to work, to make things work, is the contracts have got in the way. So is it really the case that we should start talking about what we need, what we want, and talk about the contracts and the contractor issues later on? Is that the case?
You're a practice manager, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah, we often use the term form follows function. So we're saying that in the early stages it's the functional aspect of population health management, analytics of the registered population, and thinking about the service that's going to meet that need, the workforce. But ultimately the form follows function. There's got to be the technical aspects. And what we do know is that to sustain care reform, and this is international evidence, ultimately you've got to have payment reform and then probably institutional reform. If we don't accept that and we're going to say every structure and every contract is going to say the same, but we're going to reform care, there is no evidence anywhere internationally that's ever been sustained. But I think the important thing is on the functional aspects. That's why on the 4 characteristics, we do it in a particular order. But yes, we have a technical advisory group which is looking at clinical governance, information governance, indemnity, on some of the potential contractual issues. When we've had some fora, we had a big pharmacy fora, which was about how you align the incentives of community pharmacy with general practice. It was amazing how quickly they said, let's not talk about contracts, but how quickly they said, we can change all this, we can probably change some contracts. I think it's just where to focus efforts at the early stages. But ultimately, yes, there's going to be some discussion about what the contractual consequences are of a reformed programme.
Thanks. Any more?
If I just ask you, Michael, how on board are our partners? You mentioned the trust and stuff. I was just wondering about our partners in social care and the voluntary sector. I just look at what's happening for the poor sods at the county council managing their own budget. Library problems, childcare problems. I was wondering how on board they are, or how able they are to be on board. Does that make sense?
It's a good question, Martin. I think there's a very high level of commitment to the idea that we're going to have to work in a different way, in a better way. The reality is that everybody's very keen on this, and when they hear about it, it has an instinctive attraction for everyone. we've got 40% less community nurses nationally than we had 10 years ago, and so on. So everybody's dealing with constraints, but there's certainly a high level of enthusiasm and commitment to engage with this and to do things differently, which doesn't mean that it'll be easy. And we will invest in out-of-hospital care, and that money's got to then come from hospitals, because you can only spend your NHS pound once. And of course, it's not easy moving money around. So I think I would want to give a kind of balanced view. So on the one hand, I think there's a really strong message from the chief execs and the senior leaders of all the health and care organisations in Somerset and the voluntary sector. Everybody wants to do this, and they want to do it together, and they can see there's some quite exciting opportunities. On the other hand, everyone's dealing with their constraints, and some of that will drive activities and behaviours based on imperatives. So, as you know, the NHS can run a deficit and local authorities can't. So Somerset County Council has to balance its budget, and that will then that will lead to service implications. So none of this is easy. What gives me encouragement is that James and his colleagues have worked with other places that are a lot further ahead than we are. So I think there's a lot we can learn from other places, and some of the things that feels a bit fantastic, doesn't it? Couldn't we have, couldn't we reintegrate community nurses? It feels like a long way away. Couldn't we have effective work so that people aren't getting shipped off to hospital when they don't need to? Actually, in some other areas of the country, people have done a lot of that work and done it quite quickly. So I think the motivation's there, but I would just want to have a note of caution as well, and not to oversell this. And I know that James wouldn't want to oversell it either. It's really difficult, reorganising and developing health and care services when the money's tight. It's difficult enough when the money's flowing, but it's not going to be easy, but it's still the right thing to do.
Thank you. Any more? Okay, so we're going to break up into our workshops in a second or two. Thank you very much, James, and inspiring stuff. And for those of you who want to know a bit more, please go to the Primary Care Home website, which is a section on the NAPC. Lots and lots of examples, lots of great stories from different places. Just click on a page.